It's a very difficult situation because Venezuela is very polarized. Polarized at the national level. The politicians tend to be either pro or anti-government. Very little in-between space for leaders to support some of the policies and criticize others. So you have a polarized situation at the national level. However, the people themselves are not as polarized. There's a big chunk of the population that, as a matter of fact, the big chunk of the population that is dissatisfied, is discontent because of the economic situation in Venezuela, which is very difficult, very high inflation rates, purchasing power has declined substantially. So there's discontent and criticism of the government, but the opposition is also very much getting criticized as well. And so you have a certain percentage of the population that might even be a majority of the population that is neither pro-government nor pro-opposition. Some of those people aren't voting, others do vote, but they might decide how to vote the day before the elections. I think the answer is pretty evident. The social programs have been very successful over these years. And they've been successful not only because the people are getting goods and services that they weren't able to access in the past, but because the programs involve a certain degree of participation and a sense of empowerment, especially among the marginalized sectors of the population, which in Venezuela and the rest of Latin America constitutes perhaps 50% of the population. These are people who don't have steady jobs, they don't have organizational experience, they don't belong to unions, they're not represented, or they haven't been represented by political parties in the past. And so programs in which they're able to design public works projects for their communities, to give just one example, and design those projects, receive funding, and in some cases implement or carry out the projects in their communities, that gives them a sense of empowerment. And I think that's a good part of the plus aspect of the Chavista experience. Political scientists define democracy in different ways, but the common denominator is electoral democracy. When you have elections that are not fraudulent, then the country is considered democratic, even though there are certain flaws in the political system or in political practices. In the case of Venezuela, I think that it's extremely important to make a distinction between certain democratic norms that are not respected, certain practices that are being questioned on the one hand, and fraud, electoral fraud on the other. Electoral fraud means votes are not getting counted, or votes are getting counted that were never deposited. In the case of democratic norms that are being questioned, I don't know the situation here in Germany, but in the United States, there are a lot of democratic norms that are being questioned, beginning with the fact that in the United States, the current president of the United States received almost 3 million votes less than his rival, and yet he was elected president. There are so many things that are getting questioned now in US politics that I think it's necessary for political scientists to distinguish between these practices that are being questioned, and being questioned for good reasons, and electoral fraud. When there's electoral fraud, that system cannot be considered democratic. In the case of Venezuela, you don't have electoral fraud. You have certain practices that are being questioned. The Chavistas defend those practices. The opposition are saying that they're not democratic, and so it's a matter of controversy. But the bottom line is that Venezuela is a democratic country, and the problems are very severe, both on the political and economic front.